Hello and welcome to Balanced Body, Peaceful Mind Summit. And we are today very happy that Dr. Harvey Loomstein joined us. So just wanted to give you a little background on Dr. Loomstein. He is nationally recognized expert in neuropsychology, trauma, and biomechanical injury, with over 2 decades of experience in multiple advanced degrees, including a Ph.D. in counseling psychology and postdoctoral degree in biomechanical trauma. Dr. Loomstein has trained physicians, attorneys, and mental health professionals across the country. So his groundbreaking work bridges the gap between brain science and practical healing, and we are honored to have him share his insights with us today. Hello and welcome, Dr. Loomstein.
Hello, and how are you doing?
I'm doing okay. Thank you so much for asking. Very, very honored for you to be here. I know you have a very busy schedule, and thank you for taking the time to join us in the summit.
It is my pleasure.
Thank you. So I have a couple questions to you.
Okay.
So first of all, what led you to focus on chronic pain and mild head injury treatment through behavioral medicine?
My whole professional career, actually starting back in graduate school, was really geared toward the brain, and the brain focusing on particularly learning. Originally, I was trained as a mental health consultant to the public schools. That was my training. When I got out of school, I started working at that, and I ended up taking on kids who were euphemistically called minimal brain dysfunction. They had learning problems. And their learning problems, interestingly, and their minimal brain dysfunction could be taken care of at that time with something that was euphemistically called psychiatry, biological, not the biological psychiatry, metabolic psychiatry. And it was actually working with minerals, vitamins, some herbs, but you could fix those problems easily. So back then, when the kids were on Ritalin, I could basically get them off of that in a few months.
Wow.
The ones that were more difficult, I began to take a look at allergies, mostly food or what was in the air. In 1985, I started looking at something called electrotherapy. Right now, you may know it as pulsed electromagnetic fields. I began using that for chronic pain. Let me back up. I was an avid racquetball player. I used to play racquetball 3 or 4 times a week, never less than 2 hours. That was in 1976, 77. By the time 1978 came along, I couldn't play more than 15 minutes. Now, in 1977, I said, Harvey, you just got to get back in shape. So I started working out, and the more I worked out, the worse I got. I went to the doctor because what happened with this, not only was my energy gone, but I was losing muscle strength. And I was a young man and in shape. I wasn't supposed to lose muscle mass, and I was losing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I played with a group of physicians, and I said, you know what this is? That's the damnedest thing I've ever seen, Harvey. I have no idea what's wrong with it, because they could see that, after 15 minutes, I couldn't even hold a racket. So I ended up going to my doctor, and of course, he gave me a large dosage of the antibiotics because all he could do was say it's a virus. And that sounded okay to me. I kept getting worse. And I ended up having this neuropsychiatrist give me an examination because my doctor thought it was all in my head. And I realized I couldn't lift my arms up. I had no strength lifting my arms up like this. No strength. said, I said, oh, let me do it again. And I couldn't. So I went down to the medical school where they were studying these neuromuscular diseases. And I went there and they did a biopsy. Biopsy came back, and this is what the guy said: quit going to doctors. No one knows what's wrong with you. We don't know how to fix it. And in 5 years, you'll be in a wheelchair.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, sounds good to me. And so I walked out of there and I said, you're having all, but they did say you can try these vitamins and minerals. And one of them was a multi-mineral with iron, back when they put iron in multi-minerals. And I took that and some of the stuff I was giving the kids, and I quit getting worse as fast. I was still getting worse, but not as fast. Fast forward into 1985, when I got the pulsed electrical magnetics, I started using that, and that kind of stopped me from getting worse. So in 1987, what was interesting, there was a significant increase in the people who had neurotoxic chemical exposures. I worked with head injuries, so these people showed up on my door. And I was looking at them and saying, well, your brain doesn't work, but I don't know why your brain doesn't work. The only thing we had back then was something called quantitative EEG, and it showed that there was low frequency. There wasn't much amplitude, wasn't much voltage. Okay. So what I did with these people, I was fortunate to know some people out in California who were doing then what's called environmental medicine. And they did environmental medicine here. And I went out there and I talked with this guy. He was amazing. And I ended up actually treating him and his niece on into the 1990s. But what I learned a lot from him about what's required. So what I did is I realized that in order if you're going to get people well, you've got to open the sewer. And our protocol was you would spend 2 weeks taking these herbs and minerals, and do not get on the airplane to come here if you're not having a bowel movement 30 minutes after you eat. And that was remarkable.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened was now I didn't know what I was doing then. I just knew it worked. And my instinct was that you've got this poison. And out in California, they were really dealing with people who were really sick from pesticides, fertilizers, just. And I had the greenest lawn on the land, on the block. I thought that was me. I thought that was the cause of it. So we started working with these people, and we added the magnetics, and we really had great success. Fast forward to about 1992, and I started working with breast implant ladies. And these women were sick because of the chemicals, not only the silicone, but the plastics and the chemicals from the plastics that leach out into the plastics that leach into your blood. And we could measure those. We did a great job. We were involved in some of the lawsuits. There, I started using acupuncture. And I was able to take these people, and literally in 5 weeks, they had their life back. 5 weeks, they had their life back. Well, we ended up having 2 groups come. One group from New York one group from California. And they were as far as research goes, they're about as homogeneous as you can get on a ad hoc basis. They were women of the same age, same education, and they all had the same problem. And we ended up doing just a basic little psychomotor test with them. And I said to my vocational evaluator, I said, look, I don't think this is going to show anything, but let's see. And we tested them on when they got there on a Saturday, and we tested them when they left on a Sunday. And we had two groups. So total, I don't know, we had maybe 55, 60 people. And they all got better. And what happened was their psychomotor speed, it returned back to normal. It was very slow, but because they were above average, you wouldn't know it. You know, they didn't lose enough for these women to show up like head injured people do. Head injured people show up with really remarkable deficiencies in certain areas. So from that point on, I started using the herbs, and the acupuncture with everybody. It led me to write an article because of this, because of the results, that there was a link between the brain and the gut. I didn't know what that link was. I also wrote an article in 1991 that the body is a battery and that we die because we can't charge the battery anymore. And charging was putting the minerals in. You also die, the battery goes dead because the alternator breaks. And the alternator at that time I called sleep. So through my own problems and the work that I did, I came up with a protocol. Once again, I didn't know why, I just knew it worked. And we would take people that were actually chemically injured. I say I was doing Aaron Brockovich before Aaron Brockovich was doing Aaron Brockovich, because we were doing mass toxic torts. And we would have similar findings with those people who were exposed to organophosphates or polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. But now people are sick because pollution and neurotoxic chemicals are ubiquitous. They are everywhere. They're heavy metals. And in fact, there was a article, there was a string in my high school blog about how clean the air was. And this was in 2008 or 2010 or something. And I said, no, the air is not clean. What you can see is clean, but the stuff that's killing you, you can't see. After a while, it builds up and you become really sick. So by the way, I'm not in a wheelchair. In fact, the guy that told me that ended up coming to work for me. And when I hired him, I said, you told me I was going to end up in a wheelchair. He said, well, you should have shot me. I said, no, you didn't know. You took your best shot at what it was. And many people, what I have is a form of muscular dystrophy, and people end up in wheelchairs unless they find a way to stop it.
Well, that was my next question I wanted to ask. So what led you to that, and what ended up out of it? So thank you so much. Wow, that's amazing. How does the electromedicine differ from conventional pain management approaches? I know we're all familiar with the conventional approaches, and being a nurse and being in a clinical setting, I can say that we all know about it. It's pretty just regular pain management, the pills, and what the doctor prescribes for us.
Right. And there's a difference between acute pain management and chronic pain management. I do chronic. What was interesting, and let me tell you a story. My son had neck surgery, and he had the front and the back at C3, C4. Had to go in both ways, and he was in really bad pain.
Yeah, it was painful.
My approach, without knowing that, would have been put him back in the hospital and put him on a morphine drip. He wasn't going to do that. But they gave him a new drug that actually stopped the pain. And it stopped it because it blocked the sodium channel that carried the signal. Now that's amazing. I mean, and he was crying.
Yeah. Do you remember what was medicine? What was drug?
Oh, let me think of it, because when I went to this guy from me, he gave me the same thing, and I said, I don't have that problem.
But it's not narcotic, right? It's something.
It's non-narcotic. It only works for about 14 days, which is what you need for acute pain. Because if you got a problem after 14 days, it's more than just pain and the message getting to your brain. There's something else going on in your body. And then it becomes chronic.
Wow.
Chronic pain can go into autoimmune disorder, because the pain's chronic, the body thinks there's something attacking it. And so they send more of the little cytokines to kill it, and it becomes a vicious circle.
Okay, so you're mostly focusing on a chronic pain management, right?
Yes, chronic pain.
Okay.
I let the MDs take care of the acute, because they are best suited to do that. Perfect.
So why is it important to integrate multiple healing modalities in chronic pain rehabilitation?
What I learned over the years, and again, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know I was dealing with the microbiome until 2018. In 2013, they said, yeah, you know, the brain is digital. If you understood what the brain did, you'd understand it has to be digital, because it's all electricity. That's the thing. It's all electricity, and it's you either have too much or you have too little. That's what acupuncture is. It's evening things out. What I learned was the microbiome is the key to health. If your gut is inflamed, your brain is inflamed. So the signals that your gut sends to your brain, and your gut's called the second brain, your skin is called the second kidney. The message is that it tells the brain what to send to all the little organs. So if it's inflamed and the brain's inflamed, those messages aren't the same, and they get screwed up. Okay. So if you want to fix people, and again, I didn't know why the people got better, but they got better because they had bowel movements 30 minutes after they ate, and they stayed on the regimen that I had for them. They got better. The problem is most people don't stay on it past a year. It's just the way human beings are. We are creatures of habit.
Absolutely.
And we can't stand feeling good. So I eat that ice cream or eat that fried chicken, and then I pay for it 2 days later. But I found out that that's the way to fix people. If you fix the microbiome, and by the way, the microbiome starts in your mouth, actually starts in your nose, and goes to the other end. And it's got lots of places where it can stop. That's what you have to fix. So when you're taking, I have a few approaches that I use, but the one that I like is I use supplements, and I use specially made supplements. And by meaning specially made, they are engineered to get to where they're going in the body. And that's really important. Now, that leads me to my little story that I tell everybody about the blood. Because the only way you get people well is by fixing the blood. And what heals the body is oxygen. One of the things we're finding out is if you got long COVID, hyperbaric oxygen is a great treatment. Unfortunately, most insurance companies don't pay for it,
Yeah.
and it's expensive,
Mm-hmm.
but it works. And why? Because nothing can live in the presence of pure oxygen. That's why buildings rust. That's why, food gets
World. Mm-hmm.
real old, mold,
Mm-hmm.
because of the oxygen.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the thing. We know that oxygen is what heals the body. And on my understanding, you could never have more than 17% oxygen in your body, and something like that. So even breathing oxygen, you're not going to get more than 17%.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the problem when you got a chronic illness. The chronic illness is your blood. And I'm going to walk you through this.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing is your blood has to get to where it's needed. Now, you don't know where it's needed, but your brain does. And your brain is going to send your blood there. What happens if you're a diabetic? Or if you're obese?
Mm-hmm.
Or if you eat a lot of sugar? Your blood looks like molasses on a hot day. When it's slow in pushing, what's going to happen? It's going to raise your blood pressure.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's a couple of reasons for that, and some of that is in your transverse colon, which is at the other end of the microbiome. So the blood has to get there. That's one problem. Now, the blood also has to have oxygen in it. Where does the oxygen come from? Your lungs. So you got to be able to breathe. Most people in a chronic disease don't breathe diaphragmatically. They breathe from their chest.
Shallow breathing.
And so they never inflate their lungs and get a deep breath.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So now we'll get the blood into the oxygen, but the blood has to have something to hold on to, which is what? Red blood cells.
Mm-hmm.
Where are red blood cells? They're in your long bones. So if you have a problem with your bones, you're going to have difficulty making not only red blood cells, but macrophages, which are going in and eating up the bad things.
Mm-hmm.
So now we've got red blood cells in your body, and they're getting to where they're going, and they need oxygen. And the lungs give it oxygen, but they have to have something to bind the oxygen to the red blood cell, and that's iron.
Mm-hmm.
You don't hear about iron very much. Way back when, no, you also don't hear about copper very much either. It's another slow mill. Way back when I was a kid, they used to have something called iron deficiency anemia, and you took Geritol for it. And all Geritol was a tonic that had iron in it.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, there were a couple of psychiatric medications that were like that. Boy, did they smell. I was a pharmacist, and that's why I know. Really smelled. Anyway, but that was the treatment. They gave people iron and settled their nerves.
Mm-hmm.
Probably put some zinc in there too, which is good for your nerves. So now we've got iron, and we've got binding the oxygen to the red blood cell, and now the blood is on its way. But here's the thing: you have to have something that makes a spark. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to have fuel to burn to make the reaction.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm going to say this is really simple. This isn't meant for physicians. It's just meant for people that listen to this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And this is really simple. It's more complicated than this, as you can attest to.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a good example of how your body works. Remember, you got 57 trillion cells in your body, give or take. And they're all doing something.
Mm-hmm.
They're making a lot of energy.
Yeah.
Okay. And you got to keep the energy flowing. So it's the cells that keep the energy flowing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so in order to get the oxygen into the cell, let me go back. We need potassium, sodium, that makes the spark, calcium, and magnesium,
Mm-hmm.
and fat, What do we call fat that they always want to get rid of? What do we call that? They always want to get rid of your cholesterol, right?
Mm-hmm.
Every cell in your body has cholesterol in it. Every single cell. Gotta have it. Okay. So now we got the things going through your bloodstream. It gets to where it needs to go, and it exits out of your bloodstream. And we call that space the interstitial space. It's the space between all the cells. It's where everything happens. So we got the little oxygen, and it goes on and it latches on to the cell where it's needed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's got to get in, and how it gets in is calcium. Calcium takes it into the cell.
Mm-hmm.
We get a spark between the sodium and the magnesium. I'm sorry, between the sodium and the potassium.
Mm-hmm.
We get a little spark, and we get the cholesterol, and we get things happening.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very fast, doesn't take much. But what happens after you make that splash? What happens then? What do you have? What are you left with? You're left with refuge. You're left with garbage.
Mm-hmm.
This is where chronic illness comes from.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have a way to get rid of the cells. The magnesium takes the cell out, puts it back in the bloodstream.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the problem. If there's no place for your liver, because it's going to go to your liver, to dump,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and your kidneys don't work, it keeps keeping recirculated.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, your body says, I can't do this anymore. And you lose power, you lose strength, you lose a lot of, you get brain fog. Because what happens in your brain is we have microglial cells, and they work at night when you sleep.
Mm-hmm.
But if they don't have a way to get out into the cerebral spinal fluid and back out into the brain and in the bloodstream, it stays there. And then you wake up in the morning and say, my God, I've been sleeping all night and I feel terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Or I can't think, or whatever else you can have in your mind.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why it's important to keep your sewer open, because the liver has to have some place to dump. The lymph system, which is the garbage collector, it has to have some place to dump. And it dumps into your gut. So there you have it. Your gut has to work. Now, you have something like 13 trillion cells in your gut. And you've got a lot of what? Bacteria in your gut. You've got bacteria, you got fungus. I understand you probably have other things in there that I don't want to talk about. But your body has to have all of these things to work. And what you have to realize is we used to get these things in the food we ate. That's where we got them.
No.
When I was a kid, we had Wonder Bread, and it said 12 vitamins and minerals, and then it went to 8 vitamins and minerals. Now it doesn't say anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
We have a problem with glyphosate. When it rains glyphosate around the world. Glyphosate, and you got that in your body. You have plastic in your body. You got a little bitty plastic in your brain. And little babies that are born, if they go through the birth canal of mother,
Mm-hmm.
they end up with 220 to 280 PFAS, forever chemicals, in their body. They're born with that. So what do we end up? We end up with a little 3-month-old baby having eczema. Really? When did that come about?
Yeah, all those allergic
Right,
reactions.
and its reactions.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, that's the story. That's how all of this works. And the key is the enjoyment you're going to get out of your life is related to how well your detox pathways work. Your liver, your kidneys, your lungs, and mostly your biome.
Yeah, it's all
And if that's,
interconnected.
and if that's working, then your brain's going to work and you're going to be happy.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how we got to keep making the energy that keeps our body going.
So what practical steps would you recommend us to do? What can we do to help that system to work that properly and function properly?
Well, it's interesting you should ask that, because I'm working on a paper of why was it easier for people to lose weight in the 1960s than it is now. One of the reasons is the food was better. We were eating at home, and we had home cooked meals for whatever the value.
Mm-hmm.
They were higher in food value.
Absolutely.
You may not have liked mom's cooking, but it was, believe me, 100,000 times better than eating at McDonald's.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing. And when did fast food start? It started like in like 1965, I think, was the first McDonald's.
Mm-hmm.
We also were exercising more. When people came home from the war, they were wound up tight like a watch.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody was looking for a release. And so you would have pickup basketball games, you would have picnics. I remember as a kid, we used to go to the park. My father was in the Masons, and we're in B'nai B'rith. And every year, each of those organizations would have a picnic, and we'd all go over there. And I thought it was great because we got free Cokes. Can I go get a free Coke now? Yes. But we'd have softball games and horseshoes, and people sat outside in their yards and they talked, because we're social animals.
Mm-hmm.
And if we don't talk and have connections, we get hurt. So the next thing is, so we had athletics, and we had diet, and we had music. And we had the Beatles, and we had the Beach Boys, and we had the Rolling Stones. And basically people got out and they danced. But that music was designed to make you feel invincible. And if you listen to the music from the Vietnam War era, that's why they played the metals and the heavy metals. It makes you get up and go out there.
Mm-hmm.
Then what happened is we got into if you did those things and you watched your diet, it was easy to lose weight. But the biggest thing is, we hadn't yet started living up to the slogan of better living through chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
That slogan was written in 1935 by the I.E. DuPont Company. And their idea was, and believe me, folks, it has worked and it is still working. We are going to live better through chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
I'm here to tell you that whatever we know about toxic chemicals, they knew in the 40s. And how do I know that? I was in a number of lawsuits as an expert witness, not for the chemical companies. And when they asked me how I knew all of this, I said, I read it. Where did you read it? I, took out about a foot of literature for studies.
Mm-hmm.
I said, here, when you get done with that, I got another foot. All of this was known. They know how toxic they are.
Yes.
They were knowing that it causes, they may not have known it caused DNA damage back then because they didn't know about DNA. But they knew it caused destruction in cells. They knew that you would get certain chemicals would cause you not to be able to breathe.
Mm-hmm.
Certain chemicals would cause your skin to break out, particularly if it come in contact with it. But that didn't stop them, because the idea was, oh, well, we'll make it faster, cheaper, and something will come along that will remedy the situation.
Mm-hmm.
That was the idea behind plastics. And I remember, again, being a child shrink, I said the explosion in autism came about at the end of the 80s and the early 90s. And I wasn't treating kids then, but I said, autism is not caused by vaccines.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it were, it would have been there all along. It's caused by, and I honest to God, I said this a number of times. I'm going to be dead when you find out that autism is caused by plastics. Well, I'm not dead, and autism is caused by plastics. It's actually caused from the components and what those components do to the genes. So from that case, it can be a genetic disease. But if you try to fix that, you're not going to get any place. That was always my thing with Western medicine. It's reductionistic. And you've got to go to treat the whole person and fix them. So, and the thought was, this was the thought, somebody's going to come up with a way of fixing the plastics. Guess what? We're here now, and there is no way. There isn't. I'm not saying that they won't come up with it, but I'm not sure how much. I don't know if we know enough about the blood to put the stuff in that's going to get rid of the plastic, because I think the only way you get rid of the plastic is to melt it. And melting it, you got to use what? Toxic chemicals or electricity or heat. And your body can't tolerate that. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah.
In the meantime, toxins are not going away. Oil, despite those people, it's not going anywhere. When you realize how much of our life depends on oil and oil products, it's here. So what do? You got to keep your livers working. That's the big thing. You got to keep your liver open. And you got to avoid plastics. Like, don't use plastic water bottles. Buy a metal one, and that you clean and fill up. The other thing is filtered water. And if you really want to get healthy, filtered air.
So true.
For your home.
Back to basics.
Yes.
Pretty much, yeah. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Loomstein. So I just wanted to ask if anybody would be curious. I think with everything that you unpacked here, that's so much more to this, I'm sure. So where can we find you? How can we get in contact with you?
You can get in contact with me through my email, which is all small letters, Dr. Harvey Loomstein @loomcon.com. My website is biotechinst, biotechinst.org. And I'm also a director at the World Organization for Energy and Frequency Medicine, and that is WOEFM.org.
Perfect. Can you do something virtually, or it has to be done in office?
Everything we do is virtual.
Perfect.
And that includes the analysis for the person. We do a voice scan that actually is the same thing as if you went to an Oriental medical doctor and they did pulse diagnosis. It gives us that much information.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you so much for all your time, for this amazing, valuable information. I know a lot of people will get a lot of value out of this.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and have a great day. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Thank you so much.